Welcome to rSlash Offmychest, where OP gets caught in her evil sister's Machiavellian scheme. Our next Reddit post is from OK Independence. I was 21 when my fiancé asked me to marry him. He was the absolute light of my life. We had known each other since preschool. Our families are very close. He would come and have dinner with us on a daily basis, and vice versa. He doesn't have any siblings, but I have 2 older sisters, which is very important as he was also very close with them. We grew up together. When we started dating, I don't think our parents stopped celebrating for weeks. He helped me deal with a lot of my anxiety, and even when I gained a little weight and my mother berated me saying he was going to leave me, he told her off and said that he loved me for who I was, not for what I looked like, even though he claimed I was the most beautiful girl in the world to him. We were only engaged for 6 months before the incident. My middle oldest sister, Nikki, was a very cold person. She never showed any affection. She only ever opened up to my fiancé as she said that she saw him as a brother. And he also helped her through a lot of her dark times, such as battling drug addictions and breaking the law. Nikki and I never saw eye to eye. I loved her dearly because she was my sister, but I didn't like her as a person. Out of the blue, she tells me she wants to take me clubbing as we had never been together before, and she felt bad that she was so distant to me. I agreed, and that night we went out. Clubbing wasn't really my style, but once I had a few drinks, I loosened up and began having fun. The night was going smoothly, until Nikki spotted a guy across the room whom she claimed she wanted to climb like a tree. She walked over to him, and within a few minutes, she was back and she had a sour expression on her face. I asked her what was up, but she never said anything. I kept pressing because I didn't want our night to be ruined. She then told me that the guy didn't want her number, but he wanted mine instead. I told her the guy was a loser, and there were plenty of guys around who would kill to be with a girl like her. She didn't budge though. She told me she needed to use the restroom and then we'd leave. I waited for an hour. During this time, I was sipping on a lot of different cocktails. I then started feeling really dizzy and lightheaded. I figured I would just take a cab home as I was certain Nikki had left. On the way out though, I bumped into a friend of Nikki's whom she had briefly dated. He asked me if I needed a hand to my car, and I explained that I was getting a cab, and he said that he was getting ready to leave and we could share one. I told him okay, and we walked out the club together and into the first cab that we saw. I tried to find my phone in my purse, but I felt myself getting dizzier and dizzier. I don't remember what happened next, as I blacked out, and the next morning I woke up on a hard sofa, my head pounding. When I came to, I realized that I was in Nikki's friend's house and my phone was sitting on the glass table in front of me, but it was flat. When the guy noticed I was awake, he offered some tablets and water and explained that I had passed out in the cab, and he didn't remember my parents' address, so he just picked me up and took me back here where he laid me on the sofa. I told him I needed to go home as my fiancé would be worried. He called a cab and I left. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mother, father, Nikki, my fiancé, and his parents were all standing in the living room. I thought they were worried about me, but the instant I opened my mouth, my fiancé asked, "How could you do this to me?" I tried to explain that my phone had died, but then my fiancé started screaming about me cheating on him. I was baffled. Why would he think that? I tried to explain the night's events, but I kept getting cut off. Nikki then chimed in and said that I was a lying slut, and how could I be so heartless to a man who had been there for me through thick and thin. She went on to say that I kept flirting with random guys all night, and then she went to the bathroom, and she saw me leave with her friend. I told her what happened, and she showed me photos on her phone where, as we were leaving, his hand was on my back, ushering me outside. Yeah, the photo did look horrible, and I was so drunk I didn't even realize his hand was on my back at all. My fiancé was so angry. He kept shouting, and his mom and mine were both crying. I then asked Nikki to call her friend, and he would confirm nothing happened. But when she called him, he told a completely different story. He said that I begged him to take me back to his place, and when he did, we slept together multiple times. I saw red and started crying and yelling at Nikki because I knew she had organized this whole thing to make me look bad. I begged my fiancé to believe me, but he just shook his head and left. When everyone had cleared out, my mother slapped me across the face and told me to get out. I left and went to a friend's house where I stayed for a few nights. During those nights, I called my fiancé crying and pleading with him to believe me that nothing happened, but it all fell on deaf ears as he never returned any of my calls or texts. My mom texted me and told me she was kicking me out and that she couldn't believe that I would do such a thing, and a lot of other hurtful slurs that I don't think I can repeat here. She didn't even give me time to get my things as she threw everything out. I was now homeless. None of my family would take me in as they chose my fiancé and mother's side. I was homeless and single in less than a day and a half. My entire world had been taken away because of Nikki's lies. Now, for weeks, I tried everything to get my fiancé back and my family. The limit for me, though, was when Christmas time had come and I went over to my mother's house to try to reconcile. I had been couch surfing up until this time. When I got to my parents' house, I knocked on the door, but no one answered. My friend then called me and told me she just saw on Facebook that my family were in another state celebrating Christmas, and they'd posted pictures online. Everyone was there, my sisters, parents, grandparents, and even my fiancé and his family. When I saw the photos, I couldn't stop crying because they all looked so happy. I cried for days and days before deciding to block them all. I even returned my engagement ring. My friend knew someone a couple of hours away who was looking for help in a restaurant, and he even had living arrangements above where he worked so I could get rent at a cheap price and work at the same time. I wanted to start over with my life, as it hurt that no one took my side, and they all left me to fend for myself. I was able to move pretty quickly and was doing well. The apartment was tiny, and I had to work over 10 hours almost every day, but I was able to save a lot of money. I'm not living in that apartment anymore. I was able to rent a much nicer condo, but I'm still working at the restaurant as an assistant manager. Now, it's been roughly 2 years since I left, and I haven't spoken to any of my family. I have no idea what's going on with them until I get a knock on my door. It was my ex-fiancé. I was shocked, to say the least. All these feelings came rushing back, and all I wanted to do was jump into his arms. But then I remembered the pain I'd felt, and I tried to slam the door in his face, but he stopped it and asked that I let him explain. She said that Nikki had gotten married, and she confessed that she lied about the situation because she had found someone she loved so much and realized what a horrible thing she had done. I asked him how he found me, and he said my friend told him. My entire family had been trying to get in touch with me and wanted to see me. I told him I needed time to see if I even wanted to have him in my life. He left, and I've been a mess since. I don't know what to do. I know that I'll never, ever forgive Nikki. She could rot for all I cared, but it's hard because my other family and fiancé didn't know that she was lying. But I also felt like they abandoned me too quickly without letting me explain my side. I don't know if I should forgive them. Then OP posted an update. So I never got back to my ex. I didn't know what to do, but eventually he must have given my phone number to my parents as they texted asking to meet up. I never replied and was planning on organizing a Zoom meeting, but I didn't need to as they also showed up at my door. Well, my father did. When I answered the door and saw him standing there, I ended up throwing up, which he insisted on cleaning. When he was done, we sat down and I just burst into tears. My emotions were all over the place, and my father has worn the same cologne for a really long time. So when I smelled it, it just brought back all these memories. He tried to hug me, but I pushed him away and asked what he was doing here. He went on to explain that he and my mother are getting a divorce. He said that he begged my mother to get in touch with me the minute I left, but she refused and said that I was acting like a baby, and if I wanted to leave them after doing something so horrible, then I could do things on my own from then on. I asked him how long did it take them to notice that I was gone. He said they arrived back home after New Year's Eve and were planning on inviting me over so we could talk. That's when they got in touch with my friend, and she told them I left and she didn't know where I was. I asked him why he didn't listen to my side of the story, and why did they throw me away so easily? He just started crying. He said he never meant for things to get so out of hand, and he wishes more than anything he could take it all back. I said that when they found out Nikki was taking drugs and dropped out of high school, they didn't throw her away. Instead, we all went on holiday so she could focus on things besides drugs, and during that trip, she got hooked on alcohol, and each time they defended her over and over. He said he had no idea my mother was going to kick me out. He thought that it was going to be for a few days, but then they decided last minute to spend Christmas out of state. My mother apparently promised him that I would be allowed back home after they got back. I said she threw away all my stuff, but he said that everything was still there and she lied about that. I asked him what about Nikki, and he said that she is dead to him. He wants nothing to do with her, but my mother has been crying to him, asking to forgive Nikki as she's not well, and they'd already lost one daughter, they can't lose two. He blocked my mother and Nikki and has been on my ex's case about finding me. My ex caved when my dad said that he blocked my mother and Nikki, and my ex told him where I lived. I asked my father that he never show up again unless I give him permission, and he agreed. He asked what would happen now, and I said I really don't know, and that he hurt me really bad. I then just went into detail about how much he hurt me, and what it felt like seeing them so happy without me, and how hard it's been. We both cried by the end of it, but I was really glad I got it all out. It felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. My dad said that he knew a few places around the area and he would help get me a better apartment. And he said that he would help me get a better job, but I told him that I wouldn't be leaving this job because my boss helped me out so much and I wanted to repay him at all costs. I said I didn't want him to do anything for me, but I said I do want to reconcile, but it has to be on my own terms, and it's going to take a very, very long time to trust him again, and I may never trust him again. He said that he would do anything to make up for what he did. I asked him why Nikki did this and if she said anything about it. Well, she said that she thought my ex deserved better than me and she wanted to see him happy because he was making too many sacrifices in the relationship. She loved him like a brother and wanted to break the engagement off, so that night she asked her friend to come and escort me out of the club so she could get photos, and to take me home so her plan could work. She said nothing sexual happened. I went to sleep on the sofa and that was it. He was up playing video games all night until I woke up, which he has proof of, apparently. My dad was planning on getting my stuff from my mother's house and bringing it to me, but I told him that I didn't want those things anymore. I then asked about Nikki's husband, and he said that my mother's been hush-hush with the entire situation, but he had his number and wrote it down for me. After my dad left, I decided to call Nikki's husband. I was sweating the entire time and felt so sick. What if I could hear her in the background? Well, anyhow, when he picked up, I just spit everything out, which I deeply regret because I should have eased into it for him. He sounded really confused, and I explained the entire situation again. I even went into detail about her drug and alcohol problems. I was honestly expecting him to curse me out and defend Nikki. Instead, he let out a long sigh and, well, turns out he had a feeling that she wasn't exactly innocent. Turns out her and his sister have been having problems, and she's been spouting non-stop lies about his sister and has caused a huge rift between them. His sister didn't even attend their wedding. I told him I was sorry, but he should make things right with his sister because Nikki was the problem, not his sister. We spoke a little more and he hung up. I'm not entirely sure what he's going to do with that information. I hope he cuts his losses and leaves her because he sounded like a really nice person. And even he's lost his sister because of Nikki. So I've decided to reconcile with my dad. My mother has always run the show their entire marriage. So the fact that he's putting his foot down and divorcing her and going no contact with Nikki shows how serious he is about wanting to make amends. I don't think that I will ever reconcile with my mother, as she thinks Nikki is a victim also in all this. And at this point, I don't care to listen to her excuses. If she reaches out and we talk, I'll update the post again. As for my ex, I haven't had the time to meet with him and talk. Though my dad mentioned he wanted to come with my dad, but he also told him I'd be too overwhelmed if both were there, and seeing them separated will help make clear decisions. He also mentioned that my ex was arrested for assaulting Nikki's friend, who lied about the entire situation. He was being charged, but the charges were dropped a few days later. Wait, so your sister drugged you and confessed to it? Shouldn't she be in jail? Go to the cops. OP's sister and the friend who helped him both belong in jail. I am glad that there's kind of a happy ending with OP reconciling with her dad, and I also hope that Nikki gets dumped by her new loving husband. Our next Reddit post is from Scavenger Bebop. So last Friday morning, I stopped at Starbucks before work, running on autopilot, half dead, just needing caffeine to function. As I was waiting for my order, I noticed this older guy at the self-serve station looking completely lost. He had one of those reusable cups, just staring at the oat milk like it personally offended him. I hesitated for a sec because, social anxiety, but then I just asked, "Hey, do you need help?" He looked so relieved and admitted that he had no idea how the whole milk and syrup situation worked. Apparently, his wife used to make his coffee every morning before she passed, and now he's trying to figure out how to make it taste right, but he can never get it the same. That alone kind of punched me in the chest. So I walked him through it. 2 pumps of vanilla, a little oat milk, and stir. He said because his wife always stirred it 3 times. Aw. He took a sip, smiled, and went, "You just saved me $4. This tastes better than what they make behind the counter." Then he patted me on the shoulder like I just fixed his whole life. I know it was such a tiny thing, but I've been thinking about it all day. Like, one day, the person who knows exactly how you like your coffee might not be there anymore, and that's just life. I don't know why this wrecked me at 8 a.m. on a Friday, but here we are. Anyways, I just needed to put this somewhere. I hope he enjoys his coffee tomorrow. Then, down in the comments, we have this story from Mel's Lemonade. This reminds me of something my dad told me last week. He was at a gas station, and this little old lady came up to him and asked him to help her. She didn't know how to fill her gas tank because her husband had been doing it for her for the last 50 years, and he just passed away. My dad walked her through the process, and she was so teary-eyed and thankful. My dad had a lot of mixed feelings afterwards because he likes to fill my mom's car when her gas gets low. I think he felt it like a punch in the gut. That was rSlash, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit episodes every single day.